Hello folks, how you doing there? This is May the S-Force be with you, and today we're going to look at creating custom objects and a couple of custom fields in the Force.com platform. You can see here I am at the start page of my Developer Edition account, and haven't really done anything yet except take you through some of the just standard objects so far. And it does load your standard objects with some test data, some sample data, so we can just take a look at that. Like for instance in accounts, if I go to all accounts, we can see here it's got a couple of sample accounts for you to work with, just so it's not a completely empty platform to begin with when you're learning some development. Personally, at my current job, we pretty much work off of all custom objects, and something you'll note on Salesforce, you have a pay license and then you also have free license users. I think the minimum is 5 pay licenses, and then at least on the I think Enterprise Edition is what we have. Enterprise Edition, it's required you get 5 licenses minimum, and I think you're limited to 100 free users, so obviously it's nice to operate fully off of a custom object environment. So let's go ahead and see how we go to that. I clicked my name up here in the right, and I clicked Setup. That brings us to the Setup page, and I'm going to go here under App Setup. I'm going to click this arrow under Create, and I'm going to click Objects. That's going to bring us to the Custom Objects page. You can see we don't have any defined yet. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a new custom object. And we can type in the label here. Now, there's a couple of fields you'll notice here. There's the label, a plural label, and the object name. We're going to go ahead and make something, let's call this a patient. Oh, look, I've done this before. A patient. And if you'll notice, when the object name is blank, when you tab out of the label, it'll fill the object name with whatever's in the label field. With one caveat, let's say I called this patient record. You'll notice any spaces are filled with underscores, and let's say I had patient dash record. It puts an underscore there as well, and let's say I had patient space dash space record. It puts a single underscore there. That's just, if you're familiar with Excel, it's kind of like the conventions for a named range. There's no, I think you might even be able to put some, like a $sign in the label, but just not in the object name. The object name is going to be the API reference, Application Programming Interface reference. It's basically the programming code name of the object. So we're going to call this patient. Object name is going to be patient as well. Plural is patients. Starts with vowel sound. That's just so it knows to put a or an in front of the object. And we'll leave the description blank, but you can put your description here. Context sensitive help. If you want to make like a help interface for your object, you can have a special Visualforce page. You would have to define that. And obviously, start here is a Visualforce page that comes standard with the Developer Edition, and it's obviously not a help page for patient. And then down here you have record name. Now in this case it makes sense to have a patient name, because a patient actually is going to have a name which is a text string. But if this was something like invoice, where it wouldn't necessarily make sense or be feasible to make a name that you actually enter for each object that you create, or for each record in the object, you can set this to an auto number. I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's say this was patient ID, right? And you wanted to link a contact to the patient ID so that that could have the name, address. You know, contact has a lot of that contact information that you wouldn't necessarily need to waste with fields in the patient object. So we could make this just a patient ID and make that an auto number. And your display format, you'll see here on the right, it gives you an example. A letter, a dash, and then in curly braces, just some number format. And you'll notice if, let's say we can put PID, curly, if you just wanted this, if the patient ID was 1 and you wanted to just display a 1 without leading zeros, you could just do this. And then the starting number is where you start from, so we could do 1, right? Or if, for instance, you wanted to have PID, let's say with 6 digits and have a leading 0 there in front, you could do that. And let's say we wanted to start with 100001. You could do something like that. Hopefully you get the idea of that. And really anything before and outside of the curly braces is static text that's going to stay there no matter what number it iterates through. And then again, for our case, this can just be a text name. Pattern ID can be a text, and you see that disappears. Let's go ahead and allow reports. These optional features here, you can always allow activities later, allow reports later, and track field history later. I like to always, more functionality I think is better. Now these down here, these you can available only when custom objects first created. So might be a better, if you haven't fully planned out what your object's going to need, it might be better to err on the side of adding them. However, you can always, continue working. You can always copy all the data in a table and delete the object, recreate the object, and upload it. But let's go ahead and enable adding notes and attachments. It might make sense to be able to attach a PDF to a patient's record. And we'll launch the new custom tab wizard. You can always go in and create a custom tab for your object afterwards, but you can't enable attachments and notes for an object once you create it. And then deployment status, you can just switch this later. Let's say it's in development for good practice. So now once we get done with that, now we're in the custom tab wizard, and this is where you get to create a tab that's going to be up here, color, style, etc. Normally when you click into accounts, it would take you to the account standard homepage. Also for patient, when we create this new custom object, that's going to have a standard homepage for a custom object, where it has the recent records displayed on the screen by default, and then a drop down box for different views that you want to see of the object, and that's where you can put a different page for your starting page for the tab. And this is a patient. Let's I think there's like a heart right here. And short description if you want. That's fine. You can always do that later. This is where you add this tab to certain profiles. You can apply one tab visibility to all profiles. Also, let's say 75% of your profiles were going to be one of these. Let's say we wanted, most of our profiles to be default off. We could do that and then click apply a different tab and choose our 4 or 5 profiles that it's going to be default on for. Now the difference between these, default on means up here at the top, for instance, home is necessary and it's always on. Start here, when you create a developer edition account, start here is default on because by default there's only the home and the start here tabs in the developer edition. For the developer edition, accounts, cases, all of these, they were available to me, but they were default off, meaning they weren't displayed on my taskbar up here. So tab hidden means that that profile won't even have access to the tab by clicking the plus sign up here and accessing the tabs that way. So they won't even have the option of getting to the tab or consequently putting it up here on their tab bar. So I'm just going to apply one tab visibility. We're going to make it default on. Patient sounds like a pretty universal object if I'm going to make a application involving this. And let's click next. And this is what applications, what custom apps do I want to include this tab on. You can see up here, this is the Force.com application. We can also have the sales application, call center application, etc., etc. So this is a way, for instance, if your call center and marketing aren't going to need access to this object, this is where you could say, well, okay, I'm not going to include it except on the Force.com custom object. Let's say, for instance, you are an imaging company, and for some reason all of the patients that the hospitals use to scan your patients, you do get their data and you process it and send it back to the hospitals. The hospitals being your clients that you sell imaging to may not make sense for the call center and the marketing and sales who deal with the hospitals as clients to deal with the patient object. So for that case, we're going to have Force.com platform, which could be like the data processing or the patient data processing department of your company deal with that. So let's go ahead and save this, and it's going to append tab to users' existing tabs up here. All right, so now we've got a patient object. Beautiful thing. By default, it creates these standard fields. So when I create a patient record, it's going to show created by. It's also going to show me the created date, and then last modified by. For instance, if I create it and then somebody else down the road modifies that, it's going to show that there. This is basic to all of Salesforce objects. The owner is by default who creates the record. You can also reassign the owner if you have privileges, and you can create different rules for who you, if I am the person who creates all patients and I want certain people to be the owners, depending on sharing rules or specific criteria, you can set that. And then the patient ID, that's the name field, which is of type text that we specified during setup. So this has no custom fields right now. I'm going to go ahead and create a couple more objects here. I'm going to create a doctor object, which is basically the same thing. So I'll check in after I do that.